What's going on, Ravens flock? Randy Brown had some interesting comments regarding Tyler Loop that I'm sure we're going to want to get into in this episode.
In that third preseason game, gosh, a lot of decisions are going to be made. It hinges upon your performance.
Plus, we got plenty of preseason updates from John Harbaugh, all coming up next on the Raven Squad Show.
Rise and shine, it's the Ravens Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Raven Squad Show. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku, joined as always with Kevin Oestreicher and Kadri Ismail. We are a few days removed from the second preseason contest against the Dallas Cowboys, so a lot to get to in this episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Ravens are looking pretty. The roster is pretty much set. A couple of fringe guys that we didn't really expect in the opening moments of this offseason that are really pushing for a championship roster moment for them. So a lot of guys who we thought, the roster was set, but now with these small guys that may tween their way in and possibly have big time roles for this roster in 2025. We're going to get to, again, the kicking comments by Randy Brown, very interesting. We're going to talk about people who are on the fringe of the bubble, as well as overall messaging and overall thoughts about what happened in the second preseason contest. But first, we're going to touch on people that we think may be on the fringe of being released, cut, or kept. There's a few names that we're going to talk about. I'll start with you, Q. The first person I want you to talk about is Jay Higgins, a guy who's gotten a big push from a lot of fans and, even the media of sorts. Where do you see the Ravens going with them? I know there's a preseason game left. Do we keep him or do we cut him?
This is very interesting because going into this preseason, you were looking to see who was going to play alongside Agent Zero. And I know for Roquan, it's about accountability. It's about you got to know your job. Does Higgins know the fullness of the linebacker spot? That is the big question. Is Trenton Simpson, is he showing enough? Is Buchanan, is he in a position where he can play coverage, or is he going to just be a guy that's a downhill run stuffer and then you would send him on the blitz? And so he kind of is a one-trick pony, if you will. I think it's intriguing that we're mentioning Higgins. I would say, based upon his versatility and the way in which Zach Orr does his defense, I think this final preseason game will earn him a spot if he can make those necessary big plays, those splash plays that says, hey, look, not only do I know your defense, but I'm good enough to make plays within your defense.
Yeah, I think that's big for Jay Higgins, especially with what you said about, the way that Higgins has made those splash plays and the messaging we've gotten all off season is, hey, this defense, whether it be Zach Orr, the players, Marlon Humphrey, it's about forcing turnovers. And that is what Jay Higgins has done, 2 turnovers in 2 games. And we know, and I want to shout you out because before anybody knew what was happening with that inside linebacker group, you called it. You said, hey, this unit has a lot of guys that people aren't talking about right now. You mentioned Chandler Martin. You mentioned Jay Higgins. You were on it. So shout out to you. If people listen to Locked On Ravens, they would have known about this before because Q knows what he's talking about. We know that. But I think for me, you look at the way the roster could be constructed. I think you have room for 5 inside linebackers, potentially. It's not a lock or anything like that. And we'll kind of get into how the roster could shape up in the, coming segments here and honestly coming shows as we get closer to cutdown day. But Roquan Smith, Teddy Buchanan, Trenton Simpson, and Jay Kummel, those to me are the 4 guys that I think you have on the roster right now. That 5th spot to me comes down to Jay Higgins and Chandler Martin, and both guys have played well. But if I were to go with one over the other right now, I would probably put Higgins there, and then I would hope that Martin clears waivers and get him on the practice squad. Right now, I think he's earned it, but as Q said, I think if he can have that one big push in the final preseason game, that would all but solidify it.
Good point. And another player who's also in a crowded room, but is also playing very well. Very interesting your take on this, Kevin. I'll start with you. Ruben Lowry. Ruben Lowry had that big-time interception in that game against the Cowboys. He's had flashes throughout camp. Looks like another potential guy that can come in and steal a roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if we're doing keep or cut, Ruben Lowry to me is a keeper. I think that the Ravens right now, especially with the messaging we've gotten from John Harbaugh about his versatility, and Sam, I know you and I talked about it during the Locked On Ravens squad show on Saturday after the game, but that interception, what was he doing? He wasn't playing corner. He was playing single high safety. It ended up getting an interception there. So having that versatility in this Ravens defense is super important. He's been all around the ball in training camp. Q, I know you've seen him up close and personal do his thing over the course of the last couple of weeks. I think he's impressed, and I think the fact that you never want to have it happen this way, but the injuries to Bilal Kone and Robert Longerbeam, them being out for the season, there was going to be a battle there to see out of guys like Jalen Armour-Davis, Kone, Longerbeam, Ruben Lowry, even guys like Keon Martin, who I know we're going to get to. Like, there's a lot of those young defensive backs that were fighting for maybe 2-3 roster spots, potentially, maybe 4. I know Bo Brady can also now throw in this conversation. John Harbaugh had some comments about him. But right now, I think Ruben Lowry stands head and shoulders above those guys based off of not only his production in training camp and production in the preseason, but the way that he also attacked it on special teams. You want to make this Ravens team, you want to make a name for yourself? Well, making a name for yourself on special teams is a good way to do it. So right now, I would say Ruben Lowry, at this point in time, if the roster were to be finalized right now at 7:46 p.m. on August 18th, he would be on the roster.
You know, it's so interesting, too, because we're forgetting about the practice squad flow of the Ravens. And when it comes to these secondary guys, it's not necessarily about, well, it is about the active roster, and that's what you want to achieve. Don't get me wrong, but you know, if you're on that practice squad, there's a good possibility that you're going to be called up and get in some significant playing time. Like, this roster is a great, strong roster, but you get guys that get banged up all the time. And the way the Ravens practice and the way they prepare their players, I think this is a case in which if you're Ruben Lowry, you got some decisions to make as to the trajectory of your career. Do you want to go to another team? Do you feel like you're going to be on that 53-man and play significantly? Or do you want to develop, be on this, practice squad and know that you're more than likely going to get called up? You get called up, you're on a winning team. Like, you get an opportunity to, the win now proposition. You might go to the Jets. You might go to the New Orleans Saints. You might go, to a team that just, the Arizona Cardinals, mother of pearl. You're going to be sitting there talking about some, oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. No, I'm not. What the heck? This sucks. So there are decisions that need to be made that the fan base might not fully appreciate as far as what is in the best interest for you as a player, both short-term and long-term.
Good point. And that was a great segue to my next player, Keon Martin, a guy who could be in a similar situation, shown flashes in preseason as well as training camp. Q, what are your thoughts about him potentially being on this roster?
It's so interesting because we're talking so much heavily defense, and it's a good thing. Like, Zach Orr, his defense is so incredibly tough to learn, and you're talking about these young guys that are just picking it up, and it's not the Malachi Starks that we're talking about. It's not the Mike Greens that I said it. Mike Green.
You sure did.
Mike Green. Well, nice. The streak continues. But we're not necessarily talking about those two guys in particular. We're talking about Martin. I mean, what are we talking about? We talking about Martin. Why are we talking about Martin? Well, the reason why we talking about Martin is because you got a team that the way they practice, they give you every opportunity to take some mental reps on the physical side of it. What do I mean by that? Other teams, they'll just, play their first and second units and all that. You got your first and second unit and your third and fourth unit practicing on one end and on the other end. It gives you not a mental rep only. It gives you a physical rep. So when you're going through keys, well, now we talking about Martin at practice because he was not flinching when his time came to have a backside blitz. And good for him. And therefore, that shows not only am I paying attention mentally, physically, I understood the assignment when we were going through it because there's a lot of nuance there. Mike Green doing his job, occupying a tackle. But then the ability to listen to how Chuck Smith working with you and working with other rushers in general, but working with you on like, here's what you got to commit yourself to, because we know with Kyle Hamilton, what Marlon Humphrey, some other players that are no longer on the roster have done in years past where they've blitzed off the edge. Now we're talking about you getting on a roster, man. I want some guys that I could trust, some guys that are coachable, and some guys that have a flair for the dramatic. We talking about Martin.
You're on me, Kev.
Well, that would help if I was unmuted. Well, I love the depth that they have at the defensive back unit. I mean, Martin, Lowry, Jackson, like you have so many guys that have made impacts. And to me, at least, Martin right now is probably like right on the outside looking in, like just barely. Like he'd be my priority. He'd be a priority practice squad player for me. And Q made the points about it. Like a player going to the practice squad, it's about working and developing with the coaches, honing in on their skills, and a guy that I think you can use as a prime example of this, and there are plenty of them. But look at Corey Bullock this year. I know it's something we're probably going to get into here, but Corey Bullock was on the practice squad for the Ravens all last season, worked on his skills, honed in on his abilities, and now he looks like the favorite to win that backup center job behind Tyler Linderbaum. So that's an example of a player where practice squad, there are opportunities. I think there's this misconception, and it's not a fair one for practice squad players where it's like, oh, you just go there and then you're never able to graduate. No, that's not true at all. Like there's so much talent that is on practice squads. That's why there are practice squads, so that you can develop young players, keep guys there that you really feel like have skill sets that work for you. And I think for a guy like Keon Martin, he absolutely does. He plays hard. You know, he really shows the values of what the Ravens look for on the field. And I know he now has a couple thousand more Twitter followers after that whole thing happened, and the NFL didn't tag him on their tweet. So Lamar got him, and a bunch of other people got him too. So go follow Keon Martin on the socials if you haven't already. Show him some love. But yeah, man, I think that if Keon Martin doesn't make this roster, and he could be a guy that makes a late push in this last preseason game like we've talked about, but if he doesn't, he's a guy I would absolutely want in that practice squad. He's shown me a lot this offseason.
Yeah, we talked about it. Lots and lots of big-time players on defense. Zach Rohr has a gluttony of guys to choose from. Let's head over to the offense before we take a break. Devin Leary, a guy who is looking potentially to be that QB3. Lots and lots of roster decisions to make. The makeup of the roster may not have, room enough for 3 QBs. Do you see Devin Leary, Kevin, making the roster, or do you see him as a practice squad guy, or do you think they move on from him entirely after his performance the last 2 games? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad that he performed better than last week. I think that we saw more zip on his throws. He made a couple of nice ones. He had the one to Jamal Banks that was called offensive pass interference that didn't end up counting. So I know
that was so bootleg. Like that's not.
It was terrible.
These offensive pass, and you see it in training camp practice with D-Hop and like all this offensive pass interference. I mean, and the receiver can't create separation too. I mean, I don't know, man, but I think that for Leary, I don't have him making the roster right now. I don't know if he'll be their practice squad guy either. I think this preseason game is truly make or break for Devin Leary. Like, I think we can talk about it for a lot of guys. I think for Leary, it is probably the most apparent case and the biggest case because the Ravens, with the 3rd quarterback rule and everything, there are opportunities for Devin Leary here. But, the Ravens could decide if the Browns cut Tyler Huntley, do they bring him back again if they feel like he's a better fit? I think Leary has potential, but, what he's shown on tape, I'd rather the Ravens on their roster keep an extra running back like we heard John Harbaugh talk about, or an extra defensive lineman, or an extra defensive back. I think that if the Ravens move off of Devin Leary, he's not going to be a priority add for another team. So if you truly still feel like he has that skill set, I'd feel pretty comfortable that the Ravens would have the opportunity to bring him back on the practice squad. But I'm really curious to see what he does this week. Obviously, the preseason is 3 games for a reason. You get 3 games. It's not just about 1 game. It's about your 3-game sample size to show what you have. So Devin Leary, to me, I'm hoping he has a big game and we're able to put him in a conversation of, all right, this decision got a little harder here.
Yeah, I'm all about Team Leary. I've been from the jump. I think that, Cooper Rush has some of those game time quality NFL regular season starts under his belt, and he's played a lot of football. I don't think he quite has the arm strength of a Devin Leary. I think at the same time, yes, the double down flow of practice that I just finished talking about, it's a little bit different from a quarterback aspect of things. When Lamar wants to get what Lamar wants to get, he's going to get it. And when Devin is the odd man out, I think they weren't necessarily trying to catch Devin up to speed so much as they were catching Cooper Rush up to speed, and so be it. But, yeah, this third preseason game, I think he can certainly put himself in a position of a conversation, whether it be here or elsewhere. I think it would be great if he does show out and show up. And I think the poise in which we saw him play in this game showed that he had more in him, and he's going to continue to only refine his game the more repetitions he gets. So I think this will be a great week for him that heads now. Unfortunately, you're not going to have the joint practice. They canceled joint practice against the Commanders because I guess the Commanders having a late preseason game, and then to kind of do what technically a joint practice is all about, it's too much. And so, John and them, I guess they decided they wanted to shut it down, which is fine. But it's not fine when you're talking about guys like Devin Leary, who, it's just another notch in the belt of experience that would go a long way.
Yeah, I would really hope that Devin Leary gets a chance to play with the twos, get some more protection under his belt, get some better weapons to work with so we can really see what Devin Leary got. We know what Cooper Rush is. He stared down Wester in that play, and, you would love to see Devin Leary step up and be that guy. Maybe he gets an opportunity to do so. The Ravens would be very fortunate to keep him in the practice squad, somebody who's familiar with the offense, get another year under his belt, train him up a little bit. But if he moves on to another place, then that leaves a spot open. As Kevin mentioned, QB3 is a very vital position that you can use in certain situations. So very interesting indeed. When we come back, we'll touch more on this, but more about roster pushes, more about, maybe some veterans that may be on the brink of either losing a spot on the starting lineup or maybe even losing a spot on the team entirely. So we'll touch on this next here on the Raven Squad Show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Raven Squad Show are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I just accepted my 7th league on Yahoo Fantasy, trying to get as much wins as possible. As I mentioned previously on previous shows, I've been losing a little bit, but I think this is the year where I step up and finally get that championship. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play Yahoo Fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Okay, we are back here with the Raven Squad Show. Again, we are available twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, we'll have a post-game show available after the games. So that schedule may fluctuate a little bit, but we'll make sure we get you twice a week here for some Ravens content. Also, Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Oestreicher, Monday through Friday, sometimes even on the weekends, depending on the news. So he's available for your daily Ravens news. So make sure you like, subscribe, and join in for all of that Ravens news action. Okay, we talked about some roster cuts potentially, some guys we're going to keep. Let's more focus on the pushing aspect of this roster, guys who believe maybe losing playing time, gaining playing time. One person I want to start off with, Trenton Simpson. We talked about Jay Higgins potentially being that guy to come in and secure a roster spot. How much does that affect Trenton Simpson's playing time? Has he done enough since kind of losing the luster a little bit last year to get some more playing time opposite Roquan Smith? Q, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about Trenton Simpson in this roster this year?
It's interesting because I've been really concentrating on him and seeing if he's, like you said, that push, if he's really, ready to do what he needs to do. What is ready to do what he needs to do? Like, is he going to make a splash play? Is he going to, show up bigger in a key moment when it comes to the preseason? An interception off of, Charlie Kolar or in practice one-on-one, like you just see him, doing a great job against Mark Andrews. And I haven't really seen much. I mean, I know he's been in position, but okay, you've been in position. Like, I think that's the next question mark. It's whether or not you can make the big play. And that's where, for me, the push, it's stuck in neutral rather than, oh yeah, it's all Trenton Simpson all day, every day. I'm a little bit like neutral on what I've seen from Trenton Simpson in the preseason games, as well as in the practices that I've observed.
I just think that especially it was a big week this week because what Teddy Buchanan did versus what Trenton Simpson did. I mean, Teddy was just everywhere, in my opinion. He popped on the screen. He was making tackles, forcing guys outside, getting in the backfield, special teams, like everything was there for him. Trenton didn't really pop like that during the games. And, Q, like during practice, it's a holistic thing, right? So you want to take into account everything a guy does, practice, preseason games. But of course, we know that the game situations, that's where you need to be able to flash. And that's where all eyes are going to be on you. So, I mean, usually the Ravens don't love handing out jobs to mid to late round rookies early on. I don't know if this is just going to be a situation where truly they just don't use a ton of 2 inside linebacker looks and a lot of base this whole season. They might just use a lot of dime and keep Roquan out there and, bring Kyle Hamilton up or bring someone up and just play a lot of unconventional defense, which we know that Zach Orr loves moving guys around. A lot of players can play at a lot of different spots. That's a calling card of his defense. So that wouldn't shock me, but could be more of a committee here than previously anticipated. I mean, Trenton Simpson's a guy that I would like to see flash in this final preseason game a couple of times, because I want to see the practice line up with what we see in the preseason games. I think that is the step of connecting everything here for him. So, I mean, look, we know he has the athletic gifts. It's been a disappointing tenure so far for him, but, he has an opportunity to show what he can do, and I'm hopeful he can take advantage of it.
Malik Ham is another guy, I think, in that conversation that we keep on speed bumping over like he doesn't exist. No, he's in a conversation. So I know we got those young guys, and rightly so, and they're getting a lot of burn. But I think conversationally, we got to put some respect on Malik Ham's name as well.
Well, let's talk about that. Do you think he makes the roster? Do you think if he does, he'll have significant playing time and Trenton Simpson doesn't show up?
I think the main thing for him is his value on special teams. And I know that if you're not going to be a strong contributor, Trenton Simpson, then you need to do something special teams wise. And so that's where I think, Malik Ham would have an advantage to put himself in a conversation as far as making this 53-man roster. I got more value doing punt coverage, punt return, kickoff coverage, kickoff return than you do.
Yeah, I mean, I if I had to give my final roster prediction right now, I'd probably say Malik Ham personally to me doesn't make the roster, but I think he's making a strong case at least to be in consideration for that, and that's all you can do. And you're right, once you get down to those final few roster spots, final few depth pieces, what is your value on special teams? That's a huge thing. I mean, I remember when we were talking about, and I mean, it's funny because Q and I have the thing with Devonta Freeman that's been going on for years, but truly when we were talking about that situation, it's like, Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, Latavius Murray, those guys aren't playing special teams. Like they're just not doing it. They're vets. There's a different type of a value in a guy that can provide you, whether it's as a gunner or as a guy on special teams that you can put on kickoffs or punts. That versatility sometimes is what makes or breaks a roster spot for a certain player. So, the way that Justice Hill has played special teams for them and how he was kind of able to work back into, there was a time where Justice Hill, I thought he was completely gone. I didn't think he was coming back. He was injured that 2021 season. I'm like, okay, where's the role? He played special teams. He showed himself and he parlayed that into now an essential part of that Ravens offense. So with what Baltimore has right now and players like Malik Ham and others who you're kind of wondering, is there a role for them? It's not just about, how well can they rush the passer? How well can they set an edge? It's also about, can you get out there for me and play on special teams? And we're not in the days anymore of, I remember when Marlon and Matt Judon were playing on special teams consistently and they were star players on a defense. We're not necessarily there anymore, but if you go out there, do your job, it at least puts you in the good graces of the coaching staff. And that in turn might get you put in consideration for a roster spot more than if you were just strictly defense and nothing else.
I would love to hear your thoughts about Rasheen Ali. John Harbaugh mentioned that they're keeping 4 running backs. It looks like Rasheen Ali seems to be that 4th running back, but we saw big plays from Myles Gaskins and other running backs as well. Special teams, as Q mentioned, is going to be a huge focal point for that last spot from the running back group. Rasheen Ali looks like a decent kick returner as well. Q, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Rasheen Ali? Do you think he's that 4th running back? Do you see maybe a surge of some other running back who's played very well? Because, again, a lot of running backs have played well, potentially overtaking that spot.
So it was interesting that John Harbaugh just came right out and said, we're keeping 4 running backs.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go ahead and be a betting man, obviously there are other considerations that will come into play. Clearly, when you're looking at, your entire roster, John has done a good job of allowing the entirety of the room to speak and not just be me, head coach, me make decision, but rather it is like, hey, let's get everybody's decision. Let's all be in lockstep. So I think, the fact that he mentioned that he's not just saying that lightly. Clearly, they're having those conversations, but he has done well in pass protection. He has done well coming out of the backfield, and he's done well special teams. So you got to check off all those boxes if you're going to be anywhere near a running back outside of Justice Hill and Derrick Henry. You better be able to pass protect. You better be able to go out there and run some routes, and you best play some special teams. You can't do those. Like, who cares if you can run the football? Those other things are crazy valuable, and that's what's going to separate you. So mentally, I would say he has to go out, just confirm who you are. Confirm it. Be strong, be steady, be locked in, confirm you are deserving to be on a roster.
Yeah, 4 running backs is actually kind of intriguing to me. We know that Keaton Mitchell was back at practice tonight or today, earlier in the afternoon. So good news for him. But I think the Ravens want to keep their options, and the special teams factor is real, just like what you said there, Q. I mean, the fact that he has been out there on the kick return unit, although I will say, Myles Gaskin really impressed me. He showed burst and speed, and he had that kickoff return, had that reception. He turned up the sideline and trucked into somebody. I was really impressed with Gaskin. I would not be mad if the Ravens kept Ali on the roster as their 4th guy, put Gaskin on the practice squad. And you know what? If you want to bring up another return guy for game days, I know 5 running backs is probably a little too much, but if it's insurance, it's insurance. I honestly think 4 is pushing it a little bit, but at the end of the day, they have enough there. And as news comes across my phone, Brian Robinson may be released. So let's do it, Q. Let's speculate. It's Brian Robinson.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. It's not Brian Robinson.
He's going to be traded, not released.
Right now, it just came across my phone. Brian Robinson may be released. So I don't know.
So they must not have gotten any good trade offers.
I guess not. I mean, that whole situation is crazy in its own right. But still, I guess it shows you the value of running backs across the league right now. And, Brian Robinson, I don't know the exact inner workings of what's going on there. But, if the Ravens release Rasheen Ali and he has a good showing in the final preseason game, would he get claimed by a team? You know, that's another question that you have to ask yourself with these moves, because I remember, and there have been a lot of these, but the most recent one I can remember is our Darius Washington. I thought he was so gone the moment he was released by the Ravens a couple of years ago. And they got lucky. They kept him on the practice squad, obviously played a huge role for them last season. But you can't always guarantee a guy doesn't get claimed. I mean, I remember everybody wanted, who was the corner's name, who they drafted, they cut, who went to Seattle. I'm usually so good with names.
You're talking about the guy that they cut the first day?
I know.
The first year?
First year. He's a rookie.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but
why can I not remember the name? Okay,
it Bu Kelly or something like that?
Caillou Blue Kelly. There it is. All right.
Gotcha.
Yes. The Caillou Blue Kellys of the world, or others as well. There are a lot of guys you sometimes want to keep, but you don't. And you say, all right, we're going to get him back on the practice squad. Then you don't. I think the Ravens think really highly of Rasheen Ali, and I think that could factor into it, where teams are going to release running backs. Teams are going to be looking for depth who can be a third or fourth running back for you and also can play special teams, like Q said. And to me, I think that Ali checks those boxes. And plus, we know that the Ravens are going to do some roster maneuvering. I assume guys like Burn Urban will be cut and have handshake deals. Other veterans will be cut and have handshake deals. That allows you to kind of bend the roster a little bit and keep 56, 57 instead of the 53. And I think Ali could be a beneficiary of that.
Good point. Good point. Let's get one more player in before the break. TJ Tampa. Now, I think we can all agree that he's going to make the team. How much of an impact is he going to have on the roster? How far up the depth chart can we see this guy going with the gluttony, just overwhelming amount of talent that the Ravens have, Q? I'll start with you. Your thoughts on TJ Tampa.
So obviously it's been the TJ Tampa show from day one of this offseason. I thought because of his OTAs and mini camp practices, he would have had at least a few more picks and or pass breakups. He had a strong Colts game, not a great Colts game. There were some plays that were made on him, but it wasn't like killer. I thought the Dallas game, it was good, and he certainly played his technique. I think he goes back to being a jammer on the outside gunners for the punt coverage and punt return unit. I think that he will more than likely be one of those blockers on the kickoff coverage unit as well. So that pretty much covers him as far as his duties and responsibilities of making a 53-man on his merit with special teams. The flow of what it looks like, is it a scenario where you put him in the game because of, week 7, 8, and 9, 10, guys are getting a little dinged up? I think that's what we're going to be seeing from TJ Tampa this year.
Right. I think it's more of a depth situation for him. Again, I think for guys like Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, they weren't necessarily anticipating Jaire Alexander being signed to this roster, which of course pushes them further down the depth chart. Now, again, it's a great move for everybody involved, but again, it kind of switches around the roles and exactly kind of what we're expecting out of TJ Tampa this season. But the fact of the matter is he just didn't play a lot during his rookie season, right? That's the big point that everybody is making. So he does need playing time. He does need reps. It's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. So when you see some of these plays, and I thought, Q, you had a lot of great context last week at the Colts game about, him playing some off coverage and having some of those receptions on him where it's like, There's still context to plays where catches are given up or a corner gives up catches. So, yeah, I mean, of course, he's going to make this roster. I still have a lot of high hopes for him, but I think the role is not going to be big for him in terms of defensive. I think it is going to come on special teams. You're 100% right. And I think that at this point, you just kind of, if a guy goes down, I think you feel all right about TJ being there. And it's obviously, he's not going to get thrown into playing time as well, because you do still have Chidobe Awuzie back there. A lot of great vets he can learn from, kind of sit back, watch, get some playing time here or there if an injury happens. But to me, I think next year might be the year of TJ Tampa. It might not be this year.
I'm still holding out hope. I think that he still has a shot this year to get it done. I like his skill set. I was telling him after the draft. You and I both, Kevin, were, and obviously Q feels the same way. I think that he has a chance to get it done. I think he has, too many opportunities. I think he should have got a little more opportunity. I mean, he's played a lot, but I think that, because last year he didn't play as much, we're not going to see the best of him until maybe, as Q mentioned, the middle of the season, 7, week 8, week 9, and then we'll start to see more from him. I think he has a potential role in this defense, and we'll talk about it later on the show, but because of some injuries in the secondary, there may be more opportunities than we think for him. But before we talk about that, we got to talk about Randy Brown and Tyler Loop. Tyler Loop, one of the few players that were given the job after that Saturday game against the Dallas Cowboys by John Harbaugh. No surprise considering he's the only kicker on the roster, but we're going to discuss it a little bit more, as well as what the kicking coach had to say regarding the process of acquiring Tyler Loop prior to the draft. All this next on the Ravens Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's a device for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We are back here. Another segment of the Ravens Squad Show. Again, we're available twice a week, usually Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but we'll have one show today and then another show post-game after the Ravens-Commanders game. Remember, you can also get the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Oestreicher Monday through Friday and maybe the weekends, depending on the news. So make sure you tune in for the daily source of Ravens news here on Locked On NFL and Locked On Ravens as well. The Ravens had a lot of players step up, but maybe none more impactful than Tyler Loop. Tyler Loop went 5 for 6 on the day against the Dallas Cowboys, kicked a 53-yarder. I know he missed one with 50-yarder, but he was very spectacular in his outing, especially considering he's a rookie coming in and it's his second preseason game action. Q, you weren't here last time we spoke, but let's get your thoughts on Tyler Loop in general. How do you think he performed? Do you like that John Harbaugh just went out and said that he's going to be the starter? And what do you expect from him moving on with the rest of the season?
So here's the crazy thing about it, because when you look at kicker, you don't really – like, you make kicks in practice, and that's all well and good, but you don't really get a sense of a kicker only until they actually do it in a game. And so for him to do it in a joint practice, great, that's cool. Do it in a game. Ooh, wow, that's some really good stuff. Had his little adversity with as far as his toe, kicking the ground. We heard it first here with our guy as we sat there, long snapper extraordinaire, Nick Moore. He gave us the understanding of the details of him, because then we also heard how he came back and hit a clutch 53-yarder to go ahead and seal the deal with the Colts game. That put me in a space of like, okay, now it's just about honing in the routine because he got leg. The leg is there. Let's go ahead now to hone it in. And so I love the fact that in this Dallas game, he just went out and nailed everything. The miss, I'm curious if it is another kind of scenario where, he stubbed his toe and it kind of looked like it was for golf, it was a pull and it just hooked and got off rhythm. But I like how he came right back and got into rhythm. So he's a rhythm kicker. That's what you want. You're going to need that when you go to Pittsburgh, when you're playing in M&T, November and December into January, when you're going to be going on the road and playing up in Lake Erie with Cleveland. Those are the things that you got to be looking at. I'm grateful and thankful that Highmark Stadium is in September. We'll got to worry about it. Oh boy. Woo. But yes, the fact that they put him in this position now to seal the deal, like, that's just one less on my mind. Now it's about, okay, let me even further expand my mind through my practice, through my habits, and through the details of my routine.
Yeah, and I loved what Randy Brown had to say about the routine. Like that to me was, first of all, it's a really in-depth answer, which sometimes you don't get from coaches. And I think Randy Brown does a really good job of, and actually did give Nick Morris some flowers, calling him the Lamar Jackson of long snappers in the NFL. So of course, same change of direction for both those guys, same athleticism, of course, got to give Nick his flowers there. But I think with Tyler, the thing that he was talking about, and I know, Sam, you said that the whole Pepsi machine thing was a quote of the year, but it just shows you like the amount of time that it takes to try to find a guy that works for you. And the Ravens, luckily, have had the success with the kickers over the course of their franchise history on the field. And I think that for me, hearing Randy Brown talk about, okay, he went into so much detail, not just about his game day routine, but how do you practice? How do you eat? How do you sleep? All of that stuff, right? That is really, really important. And the thing about even just having it down to the spot on your foot where you're supposed to hit the ball, like all of that was super cool and gives you insight onto it. So like you said, Q, the Ravens, they like their kickers that have the legs. The power is there. We saw it on display multiple times. 5 for 6 is a rookie, and your second ever game action is impressive. Now, again, right, regular season games is kind of like it's like a checkbox, right? You check off all the boxes of, all right, practice, check that off. Preseason, check that off. All right, now the next part is regular season game, regular season high pressure game, playoff high pressure game, then Super Bowl pressure. So still a lot of check boxes to go. The Ravens are trying to check off other boxes themselves, but like I keep saying, Justin Tucker was not particularly good for them last season. So if he's just a little better than him in 2025 than Tucker was in 2024, I'd consider that a win.
Yeah,
I agree. 6 for 11 from 50 yards for Justin Tucker last year. So not great. Hopefully Tyler Loop is a little better than that. If he's just as good, then no loss for Ware as he continues to develop to be a great kicker. And just to note, Randy Brown had a 2.5-hour dinner with Tyler Loop in Tucson, Arizona prior to the draft. I asked him to show him the mechanics of kicking, all of the practice shots he does, how many kicks he does during practice prior to a game, warming up and all of that stuff. And he called over John Harbaugh and let him know, and Eric DeCosta as well, and let him know that Tyler Loop was the guy. So it's all in fruition. It all came together, and Tyler Loop seems to be a mainstay, hopefully, for years to come for the Baltimore Ravens. Before we go to break, let's talk on injuries. Injuries was a huge part of this practice upcoming because John Harbaugh laid it all out to bear. Just to know, Emory Jones, he looks like he's going to remain on the NFL list at least for the next 4 weeks of the regular season, which means he won't be available to week 5. Jay Alexander is dealing with the knee injury that Harbaugh says shouldn't be detrimental to him starting in week 1. They're monitoring it. It doesn't seem like anything surprising in that regard. Isaiah Likely, no word on him yet. He wants to keep the Ravens opponents surprised, especially the Bills as they prepare for that week 1 matchup in just a few weeks. What are your thoughts about all these injuries, Q? I mean, it looks like the Ravens are getting a little banged up, not too, uncommon, especially considering training camp is in full swing. But are you concerned with these injuries piling up as training camp winds down and the regular season begins?
I do like the fact that they relatively stayed healthy. Isaiah Likely is the biggest elephant in the room. Obviously, without him there, it changes up what your dynamic is and making plays and Lamar being Lamar, because I think, they both had that amazing chemistry, and we saw, it was just a toe away from Kansas City going down in the opening weeks last year. He actually sparked the Ravens come from behind to even get into the conversation with the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's going to be a deadly blow as far as the beginning of the season. And if I was him contract year, I ain't rushing back until I know that I'm ready, because, I want to make sure that you and every other team know that I'm good and I'm going to get paid. When it comes to Adisa Isaac, boy, now they're talking ligaments, they're talking, longer than what was expected. He was having a really strong, solid camp. Now it opens the door back up for the Kevin Oestreichers of the world to start going ahead and speculating again with all these other dudes that, thank God, Matthew Judon signed before we came on air, because
we still got more. We still got more.
Oh boy. He was ready to, man, Sam, he was ready to bust out the Matthew Judon back in the day jersey signed that he had. But yeah,
Michael McCray was a practice. Suit him up. Get him back in here. I'm saying, man.
That's where Adisa Isaac, it's a tough one for him. But then, you look at Emory Jones, like I don't know. I mean, the good news is Andrew Voorhees. There's the other side of it. But the unfortunate news is that, it's the other side, and it's supposed to be win now proposition, and you need that offensive line depth / I would have thought it would have been great to have some level of competition for Daniel Faalele and even for that left guard spot and just the overall rotation of depth at the offensive line. So, boy, there's just nuance of injury, if that makes sense. Not like oh my God, what are the Ravens doing? They got so many guys injured. But it's nuance. You could see where they were keeping an eye on Bateman. They were keeping an eye on Zay Flowers. They were keeping an eye on Jaire Alexander. Awuzie, he was, vet day. There were a lot of vet days and a lot of strategic. We're not going to get these guys screwed up. We need to get them to the regular season to get them ready to play that full slate of games and compete well.
Yeah, the big one is, luckily, John Harbaugh said he's not concerned about the DBs. I know there were a lot of guys who missed practice today. And when mentioned in Jaire, I think it was interesting that he kind of said, this is something, he's been dealing with for a few years. They're being cautious, like you said, with the DeAndre Hopkins of the world and all those guys. But the thing about Jaire is he said that he had something done to take care of his knee, to help him from a health standpoint. And he said it's not anything we didn't expect, probably. So again, it feels like everybody's going to be ready for week 1. The Ravens have confidence in that, but I don't know. It just kind of Jaire doesn't need practice. He's a vet. He's good enough. He doesn't need to go out there. And then, I guess from just a system learning perspective, it would help, and being able to get chemistry with their guys, I guess that would be good. But, keep these guys on ice. I mean, that to me is the thing. Q, was there anything with his injury history and kind of the past with the knee stuff? And I think, what was it, a PCL for him, I believe?
I say, so the PCL, the way they rehabbed it, the Packers, I think that was what his father's frustration was, is that they were trying to rush it. And the PCL is just like, you got to let that thing work its thing, work its magic. But if here I am, and I know, it rolls off my tongue, and I'm not trying to, I just care. Let me just say it that way. But there are different ligaments and tendons, and there are certain ways you can go about the healing process to make sure that it is not a weakness, but rather a strength. That whole knee complex. I've had some really good results with some protocols through FSM. So, hopefully the Ravens are on top of it, and it won't be something that is a lingering issue.
I really hope so, because we need Jaire Alexander and those other guys you mentioned. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more injuries as well as what that will mean for the final preseason game, as John Harbaugh probably already alluded to the fact that not a lot of starters are going to be playing in that week 3 matchup, but we'll touch on it here next on the Ravens Squad Show. We're back here on the Ravens Squad Show. Again, Locked On Ravens NFL podcast, available every day, Monday through Friday. Kevin Oestreicher has that for you. And we, the Ravens Squad Show, will be here twice a week for you, once, including the post-game show after every Ravens game. So definitely stay tuned for that. Appreciate everybody who's joining in live. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening wherever you get your podcast, please feel free to give us 5 stars and comment to help the channel out and grow as we get to more Ravens fan bases out there and get ready for what I believe to be a phenomenal NFL season. We touched on a couple of injuries. Jaire Alexander, Q, you mentioned Adisa Isaac. Just want to make it be noted that he does have a dislocated elbow. Harbaugh said he'll be out a few weeks. DeAndre Hopkins, another receiver who's dealing with a knee injury. So lots and lots of injuries that we're going to be discussing here. But overall, over-encompassing, it feels like the Ravens are taking the approach of being cautious. They don't take the gamblers' way out. A lot of teams, including the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs, are playing their starters, but the Ravens, it looks like, based on his comments are going to err on the side of playing the young guys, getting more evaluation from them as opposed to getting the starters ready for that game. You've had some comments in recent weeks regarding the Ravens' approach to that. What are your thoughts about this potentially being another game without Lamar Jackson and company playing at least a drive or two to get ready for the regular season?
Yeah, I think we've seen where you've had other teams, quote unquote, expose their star players, their starters to at least a drive or two, and then shut it down for the rest of the game. Obviously, watching the Raiders and the Niners, you saw Brock Purdy, you saw Geno Smith, both teams, whether or not they're going to be in Super Bowl contention, I think they feel like, hey, we want to give ourselves the best chance to win at the quarterback spot. And I think because of, both quarterbacks are franchise-type quarterbacks, well, their backups aren't exactly the greatest. So in my mind, I'm like, yes, I get it that, Lamar is N of one, but there are ways to just get the rhythm. Like, it's just rhythm. But the ugly dark cloud is the J.K. Dobbins situation where he got his knee shredded. And I think that's something that can't be unseen by the Raven fan base / the Ravens. And it has halted any level of like, all right, let's just use caution, but we're going to still go out. No, they just won't do it. So you got to respect it. And I understand. And here we are. We're going to be looking at the Commanders game, absent number 8.
Yeah, I mean, this to me was the outcome that I was expecting. Like it was, and Q, you mentioned it with the J.K. Dobbins thing, and I saw some people talk about the Keaton thing, and oh, he can play, and you're putting him on the field at FedEx. No, thank you. I'm all right. I don't need that. We've seen what happens there before, but yeah, I mean, this is kind of the way. Right now as we're recording this, Joe Burrow's playing for the Bengals, and right, the whole 9 yards. Like, teams do have that approach, but the Ravens clearly take things with a side of caution. And I think that it's fine. It's just, if they start 0-2 again, if the rust is there and not having the joint practice with the Commanders, that was the other dress rehearsal, right? That was the thing where it was, okay, you got 2 days of hard competition against other teams. It's not your own. Now that goes down. And I get it, right? The Commanders are playing literally right now on Monday, and it would have been a tight turnaround. It would have. And I don't think that would have been safe for anybody. So at this point, you just got to hope the rust isn't there. We know that the Ravens lost by just a toe against Kansas City, and then the game against the Raiders, that clearly was, guess we don't really have to talk about that one. That was a little embarrassing for the Ravens, but you know what?
A little bit.
At the end of the day, if they're able to go out there, shake the rust off early against the Bills, the thing is, like, this schedule early on last year, it was still a hard schedule. This year, it's an even harder one. You got 5 of your first 6 opponents being against division winners. So, yeah, I just, it's not shocking. I understand that there are 2 sides of the coin when it comes to it. I know some people want to see them play a quarter or a drive or whatnot. Other people want to see them put on ice. But the Ravens putting them on ice was always what I was expecting. Even though John Harbaugh toyed with our emotions a little bit in that first week, saying, oh, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see. No, we knew the whole time. Come on now.
FedEx Field, no thank you, says Tanya. I think a lot of Ravens fans share that sentiment, but the way that field is constructed. But, we'll see what happens. It's going to be one of those things. You mentioned it. They started 0-2. Raiders lost. Chiefs lost. The Ravens don't routinely start off hot after, sometimes they do, but for the most part, especially last year, it felt like, not playing the starters was a detriment to them. But we'll see what happens. Another year under this offensive Tom Monken, another year where Derrick Henry, there's a chance that this could be a thing that, doesn't linger too much. I want to get to a question here, and I almost missed it. It's for you, Q, regarding our boy, Kadir. You were at the Raiders game. Kadir, former Raven, so he's still a part of Flock Nation, so we could talk about it here. How did he do in that contest? I think he did pretty good, but let's see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I think objectively he was really good, solid, strong. There were 2 plays, one where Aiden O'Connell was throwing a seam route to him. he threw it in a way where Kadir had to turn, stop, decelerate, go up for it. He snatched it out of the air. I think it was 45 or 46, the linebacker for the Niners. Great job by him. When I'm breaking down film with Kadir, we're breaking down film. So it's like you're going over and over. But as he secured the catch, bringing it in, and then his momentum was going back, punches the ball out. So it's an incompletion. So you're like, ah. But I appreciated him showing his athleticism. I appreciated him showing his readiness and the way in which he was able to snatch the ball. He had a huge catch right before half. That was a third down conversion. And that was critical because they needed that momentum. And just to go in the game cold, I thought was really impressive. You look at just a bigger picture of blocking. I thought he held up really well at the point of attack. I thought his special teams blocks were critical, had a pancake block on the one, cleared a big opening hole on the other. Really just, I think, is settling in as like, yo, I'm comfortable. I know what I'm doing. Again, he's always saying that he's learned so much from, the tight ends coach here, Gotze, because he was so meticulous. And then obviously you got, a guy, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, some of the little nuances. His dude, Charlie Kolar, and him, they were always just kind of like, comparing notes. So I think that plus you're going with Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, both guys who are studs in their own right, learning, growing, seeing it. He too is that on the roster bubble potential. So this Arizona Cardinals game for the Raiders, just like this Commanders game for the Ravens, there are going to be a lot of guys jockeying for position. He's going to be one of those guys jockeying for position. So strong performance against Seattle, strong performance against the Niners. Now let's build upon it and finish off strong against the Cardinals, and let's see where the chips fall when they go ahead into their meetings and you sit back and you're like, all right, come on, give me the call. So we'll see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a little marathon. Ravens play at 12. You got the Raiders later that night. You got a whole NFL slate of action. So I love it. That tight end room is looking good over there in Vegas. I'm not going to lie. It's looking good over there.
It is. And I'm very excited. I'm being a little biased here, but I think Kadir makes the team as tight end 3. He looked really good when I saw him in practice. So he's continuing to build. So good to see. Well, we talked about Kadir, possibly being on the bubble. Last preseason game coming up against the Commanders. Kevin, I'll start with you. Give me one guy that you want to see perform, who's do or die for you in this Ravens roster to get prepared for the last game of the preseason.
Yeah, I talked about Devin Leary, but I'll get to someone we haven't talked about yet. And I'm not sure if it's do or die or not, but Bo Braid's a really interesting conversation here. I thought he was a lock for the roster. The way that he's being talked about and the way that he is playing behind certain guys now, I'm not so sure. And I really like Bo Braid as a player. Like, I think he's really talented. But again, it just kind of comes down to the number in the roster crunch here. And I think that I want to see Bo Braid pop again. I thought in that first week he had a lot of great plays. I thought he showed a lot. But clearly they favor Ruben Lowry. I think it's more 50-50 than some people might think it is for Bo Braid right now, especially with the signaling you're getting right now from the team. So, the Ravens, Sanusi Kane, Bo Braid, those are the guys that were going to be in competition for the number 3 spot. Is Ruben Lowry sneakily working his way in there, and he might be the third safety to replace Darius Washington. I don't know. So Bo Braid's my choice. I think that, he can make a name for himself with a lot of good play, but if he doesn't really flash, then maybe he's to the practice squad. I don't know.
So it's interesting because if you say Bo Braid, I'm going to say David Ajabo, and he has that big play against the Colts and Richardson. He's had some good stuff, but is it now on the back of an injury to Adisa Isaac that gives him a pass, that is one intriguing look at in my mind when it comes to this roster.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. And we talked about it, Kevin. Jadeveon Clowney might make his way in if things don't work with David Ojabo. I know Q doesn't like to hear that, but never know. Just saying.
Hey,
just trying to stir things up for you guys.
I'm saving it for Wednesday with Q. My whole Jadeveon Clowney show.
I love it.
I thought if I didn't say anything and if I just threw out Matthew Judon, he wouldn't have said anything either. But
Hey,
now
you
had to go ahead
Sorry.
and mention it. Oh, look, the time is up on the show.
I'm just doing my job.
Zadarius Smith. We still got some former Ravens we can look at. There's still
He's
a couple
already
left.
signed, isn't he?
No, Zadarius is still out there.
Still out there.
No.
Oh, he's retired.
Brandon Sheriff is retired. We
Brandon
don't have to
Sheriff.
speculate about that anymore. Job, and that's it.
Great stuff. For me, I'm going to go Corey Bullock. I think he's done a good job sneaking his way in. Nick Samak, I don't know. He might be out of it. Yeah, Corey Bullock's looking really good. He could be a guy that could play guard too. So in case of injury, they love their versatility out there in Baltimore. So Corey Bullock, one more game, buddy, and you move from practice squad to the 53-man roster. So that's pretty awesome to think about. Well, that is going to do us for us here at Raven Squad Show. Again, appreciate everyone for joining in, tuning in. Please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, share with your friends, other Ravens fans who may not know about the show. Be great to get them on here and talk some Ravens football. Again, Locked On Ravens podcast available Monday through Friday, even on the weekend, depending on the news. KO's really good at getting you that news up to date and speedy. So very good to talk Ravens football. Up next, Ravens versus Commanders. Last game of the preseason. And after that, the next time we talk football is concerning the Buffalo Bills in week 1, a revenge game in the divisional round. Let's see if we can get some get back in week 1. That's going to do us for here at Ravens Squad Show. I appreciate you guys for joining us again, and we will see you on Saturday.